This purpose-built police station in the centre of Douglas is one of the victims of the budget cuts. It will close along with Port Erin Police Station. The number of officers in the force is being reduced by 11%, and Chief Constable Gary Roberts says that further cuts could pose a real threat to public safety. I asked him what he thought people would think about the news.
I think the public will be cross. Some members of the public will be a bit afraid, I think. But they can't say they weren't warned. I've been trailing it for a long time, and I've been saying, you know, if police budgets are sliced and sliced and sliced, there'll be consequences. And I did say at one time those consequences would potentially be the end of neighbourhood policing. So I'm actually really pleased I've been able to preserve a big chunk of neighbourhood policing, but something had to give. And by slicing and slicing, I've got to the stage where the infrastructure of the constabulary, the way we're deployed and the way we're structured, is now too big for the number of people that I can afford to have. And that's the bottom line here, that I can't afford to employ all the people I currently employ.
Now, you did also say earlier that policing is not a priority for our politicians, which seems like an astonishing statement, really.
If you look at things that have come out of Tynwald and have come out of the Council of Ministers over a number of years, the priorities have been very, very clearly stated, and they are health and education. Policing never gets a mention. Now, policing doesn't get a mention, I think, in part because we've been successful. We've got a good police service here, and we've got lots of really good people who work really hard, and the island is really, really safe. I wonder if the island were not safe, and if crime was high, and we had lots of unsolved serious offences like murders and rapes and robberies, if there was corruption around the police, I wonder whether we'd actually get more money rather than less.
I mean, crime has, well, bottomed out, if you like. There's only one way it can go now, which is up. So I'm sure most people would say policing should be a priority.
I think crime could go up by about 5% in the year ahead. That's the prediction my analysts are making to me. What I can see, however, is that policing isn't just about crime, and people judge us wrongly on the level of crime. That's one of the things we should be judged on, not the sole thing. And unfortunately, for years, it's become the sole thing. About a third of what we deal with is crime. About a fifth of what we deal with is mental health. Increasingly, we're finding ourselves spending loads of time dealing with vulnerable people who are vulnerable because of drink or drugs, both legal and illegal drugs, and also because of their mental health or because of a combination of all of those things. And so officers really don't do as much work on crime as they used to. Now, you could be someone who says if there is less crime, you need fewer police officers. Well, that's a really spurious argument in my view, because the attraction of the Isle of Man to business is its safety. And you don't know what you prevent by doing the things that we do, and we do them really well, I think.
Now the big changes, the big impact probably is going to be in the south of the island, isn't it? Can you talk us through what the changes are?
We're closing Port Erin Police Station. The closure there will probably happen around the end of September, about the 29th of September. And the number of officers in neighbourhoods like the south will reduce from, generally it's 2 sergeants and 13 or 14 constables that will go to a sergeant and 8 constables. So they'll still provide lots of neighbourhood policing, they'll still be visible, they'll still be there through the days and through the evenings and into the first part of the night. But we can only do what we can afford. Now, the closure of Port Erin is determined by 2 things. One is it's a very expensive building to run. It costs more than £30,000 a year just to keep it going, and that's a big drain on my resources. But also, increasingly, the needs in policing terms are particularly around Castletown. We've done work with the Department of Social Care, who've been trying to determine where most of the needs are in the island for vulnerable people. And Castletown is the place where the greatest need lies outside some parts of Douglas, in terms of crime, in terms of vulnerability, in terms of things like mental health and drugs and alcohol. Castletown is actually a very difficult place to deal with at the moment.
And obviously you need to prioritise, but you've said that you will attend every call out, but will response times be affected?
What we're trying to do is 2 things, I think. We're trying to drive online and over the telephone things that can be dealt with safely online and over the telephone. So if someone wants advice about their neighbour who has a noisy party every Friday or Saturday night, the time to give them advice isn't on Friday, Saturday night. It might be on a Tuesday afternoon where you can talk to them and work out the best approach for them. But also what we're trying to make sure that we go to things that really do require a police attendance, and we go at the right time in the right way, and we only go once. So if someone calls us out to a noisy party, I don't want officers having to go 2 or 3 times. I want them to go once and to deal with it properly. What we won't do is what my counterparts in the UK are doing, is screening out crime. Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, an entirely different environment, I understand, but he says that they now screen out 3 out of every 5 crimes that are reported to us. So they only investigate 2 out of 5. We'll still investigate every crime that's reported to us.
Okay. Now you'll be down to 198 officers by the end of the summer from a high of 248. So resources will be stretched. What will happen if there are exceptional circumstances? What problems could you foresee?
We'll reduce the number of officers temporarily to below the 210, which will be the target model that we'll have. It will reduce because we can't recruit in advance. So we know officers will retire over the next few months. In the past, when we had money available, we would recruit in advance so that when they left, there was a fresh pair of boots on the ground the very next day. That's not the case now. So in terms of deployable operational staff, we'll certainly slip down to just below 200. We'll have some people in training, and there'll be a period during the autumn and early part of the winter where we'll be a bit thin on the ground, and we'll just have to be creative. And the new model that we have adds much more flexibility in terms of the people who work at headquarters. So the specialist detectives will be much more flexible and deployed in a different way than they've been deployed before. So the public shouldn't notice a difference.
But you'll be recruiting fewer officers?
We'll carry on recruiting again. We've had a gap of almost 2 years where we've not recruited, and we'll now recruit again, and that recruitment process is underway. But it takes best part of a year from beginning recruitment to having somebody who's deployable.
And how is this affecting morale generally within the force?
Officers know something's coming, and so on the day where I've announced it to the press and to the politicians and so on, officers themselves are being briefed. So as I'm sitting here talking to you, all of the headquarters officers and the support staff are being told what's happening. It's no surprise to them. They know something's coming. They know pretty much the shape of it, but the detail wasn't something that they had until today. They are really good people. The Constable is great people who are really flexible, and they will get on and do the very best they can. Now, their morale has been damaged by a couple of things in recent times. They wonder why the Constabulary's budget was being cut when they don't necessarily see pain in other parts of the public service, and I understand that entirely. And also there have been significant changes to their pay and pensions, so that they've had real term cuts in their pay, and some of them have found that they have to work 10 years longer before they get the pension. So things outside my control have damaged them. But when you go around the place and talk to them, I'd spent time with people at TT, for example. They love the work that they do, and they do the very best that they can do. But sometimes they feel a bit puzzled about. One young officer asked me, for example, why does the government own a wildlife park when it can't afford a police service? And I can't answer questions like that.
The Home Affairs Minister, Joanne Clague, he said at the press conference that this is the end game in rebalancing the budget. So this restructure, there won't be more cuts ahead. That's
for him. I hope what he says is right. I don't know whether he can promise that, but I know absolutely that his intention. He will make sure as best he can that this is it. But any further reductions, in my professional opinion, would be unsafe. And I've been very, very clear about that.
You said that there would be a real threat to the public.
Yes. Any further reductions would take us beyond where we ought to be.